This is Terry Wagar. The date today is August 4th, 2015. I'm getting ready to pay the rent bill and utility bill for this place. And I've already reported on past vlogs. I'm a victim of a murder conspiracy, and that people in law enforcement are involved. My wife and everybody on her side of the family were involved. My wife was having sexual affairs with people in law enforcement. My wife recruited her daughters into this murder conspiracy. Me and other family members were being poisoned off by my wife, Joan Wagar, and by her side of the family, while my wife and her side of the family were palling around with Portland cops and with Multnomah County sheriffs. My wife got a job at the Multnomah County Jail Kitchen in 2000, and this is when this started, and that's when me and every member of my side of the family ended up becoming targeted by a sting operation. The same day that my wife, Joan Wagar, was told by the Multnomah County sheriffs to quit her job at the County Jail Kitchen to hide her connections with them, just so happens to be the exact same day that the Multnomah County sheriffs filled out a shit ton of 72-hour notices to take over the surrounding apartments surrounding my apartment and my father's apartment and my mother's home. And at the exact same time, they brought in a double to target my parents. And they brought in the Dunham family, who happened to have a long history, a very long history of targeting me and my side of the family ever since the early 70s in sting operations. They brought in the Dunham family to specifically target my children. And that's how this all started out. It started out with my wife working at the county jail kitchen, and she's palling around and sleeping around with police and county sheriffs and their civilian sting buddies. Ever since she got that job, me and every member of my side of the family became targeted by sting ops. And right off the bat, they brought in a double so that they could set me up to get the blame for their fucking shit. Now, they weren't hiding the fact that they brought in this double and that they had this double targeting my parents. They weren't even hiding the fact that they brought in the Dunham family to specifically target my kids. They weren't even hiding the fact that my wife and her side of the family was turning my yard into a playground with spending well over $1,000 in just like 2 months to turn my yard into a playground by filling my yard with swimming pools and large swimming pools and large trampolines for the purpose of the double's arrival onto my property. They weren't hiding any of that. The only thing they were trying to hide was the fact that it was the Multnomah County sheriffs that made the decision to do all this and to target me and my family, and that they were surrounding every member of my family, including me, by taking over the surrounding apartments, and that it was the county sheriffs directing and funding all of it. That was the only thing they were trying really to hide. And, gee, I uncovered this fact. That's one of the first things I discovered, literally. And I discovered that on the day my wife quit her job at the Multnomah County Jail Kitchen. Now, they quite literally was targeting every member of my family in this sting operation. At the same time, my wife and her side of the family was being paid by the county sheriffs that were surrounding my apartment to turn my yard into a playground in preparation for the double's arrival onto my property. Meanwhile, they had the double targeting my mother, and that double, along with other civilian operatives, were pressuring my mother, who lived in another state, to sell her home, to buy a motorhome, so that they could drive up to Portland, Oregon, to visit me. And while this was occurring, on the other side of town, my father was being gang stalked and harassed and terrorized by police sting ops who were constantly provoking him by staging street theater performances. So he was under a constant state of siege and under harassment by the sting ops that were surrounding him, while the sting ops that were targeting my mother were using a double, a look-alike of me, to target her, and they were befriending her and pressuring her into selling her home to buy a motorhome so that they could drive up to Portland to visit me, and they pressured her into taking that double into her home. And it was the double that was mostly pressuring her into selling her home to buy a motorhome so that they could visit me in Portland. Now, after my wife and her side of the family were paid by the county sheriff to turn my yard into a playground, I get a big surprise. Surprise! Here's my mother in a motorhome along with some dude that's a look-alike of me. Now, the dude is not an exact twin, but he dresses like me. He even had a mustache like me back. I don't have a mustache anymore, but back then I used to have a mustache. And he tailored his fucking appearance so that he could resemble me. And they were using him on my property and on the surrounding properties as a fucking photo double. They had the dude posing next to fences that were torn down by the Multnomah County Sheriffs. And right after that, they had him posing next to a car explosion that the county sheriff staged 30 feet away from my apartment after the fire was put out. Now, I kicked this damn double off my property, already knowing I'm surrounded by the Multnomah County Sheriffs. And that's when all fucking hell broke loose. That's when the county sheriffs literally unleashed all their fucking fury at my parents. 1 week after I kicked this double off my property, that double battered my mother. My mother called me up to come get her and her motorhome. And it was her motorhome because it was her home that paid for that fucking motorhome. And when I went to go get my mother, gee, I'm ambushed by 2 Portland cops in uniform and by the double. And the 2 Portland cops didn't give a damn that this double battered my mother. And they're fucking grinning and smirking at me while the double's standing behind them. And they're telling me, oh, I have to abandon the motorhome. I have to leave that motorhome there for that double. They're telling me my mother can't have her own fucking property. 3 weeks after that, my mother was poisoned by my wife, Joan Wager. And at the same fucking time, on the other side of town, the Multnomah County Sheriffs poisoned my father. Keep in mind, I'm already surrounded by the county sheriffs and already fucking know it. My mother's 911 call was covered up by the Portland Police Department and by the Multnomah County Sheriffs, and they did nothing on her complaint. They did nothing to investigate her complaint. And 3 weeks later, I found out that they poisoned my father. It took my father 3 weeks before he was well enough to leave his apartment in order to warn me about what law enforcement did to him. 3 days after that, my father was dead. And it was a Multnomah County Sheriff detective that came to my door to tell me my father died. And this Multnomah County Sheriff detective strongly hinted he's responsible for it because he admitted he entered my father's apartment to remove his meds. And the county sheriff detective was grinning when he fucking said that. That's law enforcement's way of flaunting their fucking guilt without outright admitting. They hint at it. I already knew I'm surrounded by these fuckers. Already knew they were using a double. I was hanging in there to prove it the whole fucking time, thinking, oh gee, I'll be able to get help after I proved this murder conspiracy that my wife and her family joined into. I was under the impression it was a few bad apples in law enforcement and that I'd be able to get help after proving it. But in the process of proving it, I'm discovering, oh, gee, there's a lot more people than just a few bad apples, and that they were targeting every member of my family at the same time. For the next fucking 5 days, I'm being threatened. I'm getting threats by the very officers that murdered my father by phone for 5 days fucking straight. They're making threats and demands, and they were lying about who the fuck they were. And I knew damn well they were the very officers that murdered my father. For 5 days, they made threats and demands. I didn't knuckle under to those demands at all. But I was scared for my family because look what they just did to my mother and my father. 1 hour after I got the last threatening phone call from these officers, my wife, Joan Wagar, and her sister, Vicky Rosales, with big-ass grins on their faces, were filling my home with paraphernalia such as porn and life-size Barbie dolls that are like 3 feet tall. My wife's fuck-buddy law enforcement was right next door. It's the fucking county sheriffs that were directing everything, funded everything they did. When I didn't knuckle under to their demands, that's when they made it known that they had the Dunham family targeting my children. The Dunham family have targeted me and my side of the family ever since 1971. I was 6 years old in 1971, and the Multnomah County Sheriffs and the Dunham family used me in a sting operation to frame a neighbor of the Dunhams as a pedophile, and they did it by using doubles and photogenic photos. And it was a Multnomah County Sheriff officer in 1971 that was acting as a double. And it was the Dunham family that brought their children and neighbor children to the double for the purpose of posing with the double so that they could snap photogenic photos of their children and the neighbor children posing with this double. I happen to be one of the neighbor children that Darlene Dunham, the mother of the Dunham family, rounded up in 1971 and used in that operation, knowing I'm only 6 years old and have no clue what the fuck's going on. So while the Dunham family had me and their children posing next to this double in 1971, Darlene Dunham was using a Multnomah County Sheriff's camera to snap photogenic photos of me and her children while we posed with this double, so that they could frame that person that lived at that house as a pedophile. Me and my side of the family have been targeted by the Multnomah County Sheriffs and by the Dunham fucking family ever fucking since. Well, in the year 2000, right after the county sheriffs had put a double on my property and I kicked the double off and all hell breaks loose and they battered my mother and they poisoned my parents, they covered up my mother's 911 call, and then they murdered my father after my father warned me about what law enforcement did to him. They're fucking trying to blackmail me, and then they made it known, and when I didn't knuckle under to their demands, that they got the Dunhams targeting my children. They weren't even trying to hide that from me. They specifically arranged for me to find out. The Multnomah County Sheriffs and the Dunham family have a history of using doubles and photogenic photos to frame people as pedos. And the Multnomah County Sheriffs and the Dunham family have a history of poisoning people and gang stalking people at their victims' homes and at their victims' places of employment and at their victims' schools. And the Multnomah County Sheriffs and the Dunham family have a history of being poisoners, and they poison off the people they target. The Dunhams and the county sheriff used me in the 70s to help them frame a fucking neighbor as a goddamn pedo, and they were using doubles and photogenic photos to do it with, and then they fucking spent the next 3 or 4 years targeting me and my family, and they systematically destroyed my family in the 70s. And they were poisoning me and my brother in 73 and in 74. So I already know what the goddamn Dunhams specialize in. And, oh, gee, right after the county sheriff murdered my father in 2000, and here's my wife and her family aiding and abetting their asses, they intentionally made it known that, oh, gee, they brought in the Dunham family. They rented a house for the Dunhams so that they could move in a couple blocks away so that they could target specifically my children. They weren't hiding this at all. The only thing they thought I didn't know was the fact that it's the county sheriffs running it all, funding all of it, and that it was the county sheriffs that were surrounding every member of my family, including me. And they used their goddamn police powers to take over the surrounding apartments. They were directing everything my wife and her side of the family did. My wife recruited our oldest daughter, Shauna Wager, into it, and she was being coached daily and directed daily by the Multnomah County Sheriff to do this for their video surveillance or to do that for their video surveillance. Our daughter, Shauna Wager, in the year 2000, quite literally became a porn star. And she's only a teenager back then. She became a porn star for the fucking Multnomah County fucking pedophile sheriffs. And this is how it fucking started out. Now, I have been targeted by these fucking people ever fucking since. I am current. This is the year 2015. I am fucking surrounded by these fuckers. I am surrounded by staying on Portland cops in that apartment. They're here 24/7. They never fucking leave that apartment unless I leave my apartment, because then they fucking follow me. And I've already got on past vlogs video of these fuckers following me. And it's these fucking cops that have control of this apartment and this apartment. They're civilian ops that are using brats in their sting operation are in the apartment directly below mine. An apartment to the right below mine, there's a retired cop. An apartment to the left below mine is where the apartment manager lives. And she's aiding and abetting these fuckers. Now, I have to go pay the rent. And ever since I don't normally wear blue jeans. I normally wear sweatpants. And when I changed my clothes, I took off my sweatpants and put on some blue jeans and put on my tennis shoes. When I'm in the process of getting ready to leave this apartment, these sting offs become very active. Extremely active, because they have me under illegal video surveillance in this apartment, and they can see when I'm getting ready to leave. They know my routine. They know if I'm getting ready to leave, well, then I'll take out my comb out of my backpack here and comb my hair and stuff like this, and I'll change my clothes and get my tennis shoes on. They know when I'm getting ready to leave, and they get very active. They get extremely active. Now, I'm anticipating the fact that they're preparing to stage some sort of a street theater performance, if not possibly just outright trying to kill me. Now, I have to leave this apartment to pay the fucking rent, and I'm surrounded by fucking sting ops that are very active. These fuckers are always there. They're not even disabled people. And they have 3 people living in that apartment. It's a 1-bedroom apartment. I have video of them wearing their police uniforms when they go to leave the apartments surrounding mine, and they go to their privately owned pickup truck. Now, I know damn well the apartment manager's aiding and abetting her asses, and I have her ass admitting couple of months ago that she broke into my apartment last year. And I posted that on my YouTube channel. So I actually have her ass a couple of months ago admitting that she broke into my apartment. Now, I already know she's a sting-off, but I already know she's aiding and abetting these fucking Portland pedophile fucking cops. I've already publicly posted this apartment manager admitting to that fucking felony armed break-in that she and a Portland cop committed last year into my home while I'm home. Now, the fact that I'm getting my shoes and my jeans on and I'm getting ready to go out the door, the fact that the people surrounding my apartment immediately become active. I can hear them going in and out of their apartment doors, and I can hear them opening and closing cupboards, and they're being very busy, very active. They're normally not active at all. But every time I get ready to leave, that usually gets them to become active. Now, I'm not going anywhere other than paying the fucking rent. So I'm not actually leaving the premises at all. All I'm going to be doing is paying the fucking rent. But I have to record this vlog, and I have to actually record the fact that I'm leaving the apartment because I'm expecting a street theater performance or possibly another attempt on my life. Now I'm going to have to set this phone down for a minute because I still have to get ready. These sting-offs that my wife and her side of the family were palling around with, sleeping around with. They decided to target every member of my family, and they decided they were going to set me up to get the blame for their shit. And they decided they were going to, since they had my wife and her side of the family, and they had our oldest daughter recruited into it, they decided they were going to set me up as a pedo, which is why right off the bat they brought in the Dunham family and they brought in a double. Now, I had prior knowledge that the county sheriffs and the Dunhams used doubles. I had prior knowledge of it. And I uncovered this conspiracy of theirs the day that my wife, Joan Wagar, quit her job at County Kitchen. I uncovered basically the linchpin information that explained it all, which was the fact that it was the county sheriffs that made the decision and that they took over the department. Now, I'm going to have to pay the rent. And I don't know what's going to happen out here, but I'm expecting some sort of street theater performance.
rent going to be raised again this year?
No, I think we're done.
Okay. Because if it's raised again, then I won't be able to.
A whole lot of people wouldn't be able to.
I wouldn't be able. I'm barely paying the rent and the electric bill. As a matter of fact, I was $5 shy on the last electric bill. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to cut back on my electricity use so that my electric bill won't be quite so high.
Right. No, I think we're good.
If it gets raised again, I won't be able to.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, they're not going to. So.
Well, I'm just letting you know I won't be able to handle it raised again. Can't pay anything. There he is. That's video. Okay. I hope I got that on video fairly well. Apartment manager just gave me a receipt. Give me a minute here. I gotta set this down for a second. Forgive me, I'm disabled. I have trouble moving around. There. I hope you noticed that. She just gave me the receipt for rent. I hope you noticed that she wasn't in her office. She was in her apartment instead, but I went straight over. Here's the rent receipt. I just went straight over to the manager's office. And I hope you noticed she didn't answer the manager's office when I knocked on the door over there. So I started walking back. Here's the apartment manager walking towards me with this receipt in hand. So she knew that I left the apartment to pay the rent. Now, I hope you noticed I didn't knock on her apartment door, which is right below my apartment and one apartment over. One apartment over to the left. I didn't knock on her fucking door. How the hell does she know that I even left the apartment to pay the rent? Keep in mind, I'm telling you, I'm getting ready to leave the apartment to pay the rent. And as I go out the door and I'm walking towards the manager's office, the apartment manager is in her apartment, and she's filling out the receipt before she even gets the check. And she's walking towards me as I'm walking back towards my apartment. She's walking towards me with the rent receipt in hand. Now, what did I tell you before I left this apartment? They have me under illegal video and audio surveillance. They can see me in my apartment. They can hear everything I'm saying. So she knows damn fucking full well that I was recording this vlog before I left, and knew damn well I was leaving the apartment to pay the rent. And she filled this out. She filled this out and was walking towards me by the time I walked away from the manager's office. I didn't even have a chance to talk to her or even give her the rent check yet. So keep in mind, see, let's get on video what she wrote down. There, she did quite a bit of writing right there to give me that receipt. That's a hell of a lot of writing that she did. Gee, is she a magic apartment manager that can predict the future and know that I'm getting ready to go out my door to pay the rent? Does she have some sort of electronic devices that monitor when I leave the apartment so that she knows that I'm actually leaving the apartment for the purpose of paying the rent? Did she fill this out today? Let's see. Trying to look at it. Let me set this phone down for a second. I gotta get my glasses to actually read this thing. Let's see. Did she fill this out today? She's not writing down. She doesn't have a specific date in which she wrote this down. She's just writing down the due date stuff for the rent and stuff like that. That's all she's got on there as far as dates go. In other words, she's just pointing out the specific month in which the rent is paid for. But she's not writing down. She didn't write down the specific date she filled it out. But I find that interesting. Oh, gee, you know, I'm explaining how I'm surrounded by a sting operation. I'm even explained I'm under illegal video surveillance. I've already proven on past videos and vlogs that I am surrounded by Portland cops that are wearing police uniforms and are coming from the surrounding apartments. And I had the apartment manager on audio, on a previous audio, admitting to lying. She's basically lying for these assets because I've already proved on video I'm surrounded by Portland cops that wear uniforms and they come from these apartments surrounding mine. And I have the apartment manager a couple of months ago on audio lying for their asses. And she's pretending there is no cops surrounding these apartments and renting these apartments or controlling these apartments. So she's fucking lying for them. That means she is a sting-off for law enforcement. If she's going to lie for the cops that are renting the surrounding apartments surrounding mine, then she's just as guilty of the crimes as an accessory to the crimes that these cops have committed. Now, how can she magically know? Because first off, for one thing, I'm actually late. You know, I have till like the 5th of any given month to pay the rent. I'm not late to where I have to pay a fee or anything, but you know, the rent is due like on the 1st, but I didn't pay the rent until the 4th this month because you know, on the 1st I had to go to the bank and I had to get some personal checks so that I could pay my bills with. And keep in mind, I'm extremely disabled, in a lot of pain. And by the time I got those personal checks, I couldn't even go grocery shopping or anything. I just went home and waited till the next day, and on the next day I went grocery shopping, which was like on the 2nd of August, and that almost killed me. The combination of the heat combined with the weight of my grocery cart, which is right there, having to lug these groceries on a bus and have to lug these groceries up these damn stairs. Oh my God, it almost killed me. On the 3rd, I was in so much pain, I didn't even bother to leave the apartment. I had the rent check already filled out on the 3rd, but I was just in so much pain, I didn't even bother to go out the door. So I managed to force myself today on the 4th of August to go out the door to pay the rent. And I hope you noticed that the apartment manager was not at her manager's office. She's in her own apartment, which is directly below mine and one apartment over to the left. Now, when I go down the stairs, I'm not walking in front of her fucking apartment, necessarily. And I find it kind of odd that, gee, how does she just magically know that, oh, gee, I'm paying the rent? How does she magically, why would she have the rent receipt already filled out? First off, it's a personal check. Why would she give me, why give me a receipt when I hand over a personal check? Aren't you normally supposed to wait for a personal check to clear first before you give a receipt? Every apartment place I've ever lived at, I've paid rent by personal checks, and they never give receipts until the check clears, ever. Now, technically, since she fucking gave me a receipt, I could be an asshole if I wanted to and just go to the bank and take out all my fucking money out of the checking account. So, screw you, I've already got proof I've paid rent right here. They're damn lucky I'm not that kind of person. But, you know, technically speaking, this is, you know, she doesn't act normal for an apartment manager. First off, that's not normal to hand over receipts to people that when they use personal checks to pay rent. If it was a money order, that would be different. Then I could see her giving me receipts right off the bat. But I'm not using money orders. I'm using my own personal checks. So she's not following their own standard procedures at all. You have to understand, I'm a victim of a murder conspiracy. I'm a victim of sting operations. I am surrounded by sting operatives. These people are guilty of murders. They were using sting tactics to commit murders. Well, they recruited my wife and her side of the family into this shit. My wife and her side of the family, as a result, became civilian sting ops for law enforcement. They were sleeping around with and palling around with law enforcement. Anybody that does that is a sting op. Anybody. I don't care who you are. If you're an apartment manager somewhere and you have buddies in law enforcement that you meet with on a regular basis or a semi-regular basis, then they're a sting op. Now, I have been targeted by sting ops fucking ever since my wife got the job at the county fucking jail kitchen. Now, I am currently surrounded by these fuckers. If I had the means to defend myself, I wouldn't hesitate. Now, I just explained, and I proved on previous vlogs, I am surrounded by these fuckers. And they're in a constant state of terrorizing and provoking. Constant. And they usually do this sort of shit when I'm recording a video. They usually step it up when I record a vlog. Now, as I was getting ready to leave, I had to change my clothes. You know, I had to comb my hair. I had to basically get ready just to go out the door because I'm not actually dressed properly to go out the door. I have to get my shoes and socks on and everything. And they have me under illegal video surveillance. So they know when I'm getting ready to leave. And they become very active when I'm getting ready to leave. The sting ops that are in that apartment right next door were extremely active. And it was only like 12:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. It's a fucking Tuesday, a work day. And it was like 12:30 in the afternoon when I started getting ready. I'm not even recording this vlog yet. I'm just getting ready. I basically just took my keys out of my backpack and was getting ready to change and to get my shoes on when they became extremely active next door. Extremely active. Now, I hope you noticed the bullshit small talk that that apartment manager is making, because that's just a fucking bunch of bullshit. This bitch, she is a sting-off. She's permitting my wife's fuck buddies in the police department to take over the surrounding apartments illegally. They do not live here. They're not tenants. They have legal address elsewhere. They do not live here. They're here to commit crimes. They're here to commit criminal activity. And they were using children in their sting operation. Well, the fucking apartment manager moved from that building across the courtyard to this building to aid and abet these cops that are surrounding my apartment in their street theater performances and in directing the brats. Now, this apartment manager has sent children repeatedly to my door at dusk when the sun is going down. At dusk. She's sending children to my door and knocking at my door. And the apartment manager stands, you've seen those trees out there. The apartment manager will stand over there in the courtyard behind one of those trees with a fucking camera in her hand. And she sends these children that the sting ops are using in this sting to knock at my door while the apartment manager's over there 60 feet away hiding behind a tree, and she's recording it with either video or for photogenic photo purposes. More than likely for video. And then they'll just take snippets of the video and use that for photogenic photo purposes. But that's what she was doing, and this is what she did just last month. Literally, just last month, like about a week and a half ago. About a week and a half ago, she did this. And it was right at dusk. I mean, it wasn't nighttime yet, but it wasn't daytime anymore either. I mean, it was like 5 minutes away from being pitch nighttime. And the apartment manager was literally 60 feet over there in by those trees, hiding behind one of those trees, and she had a camera. And she was sending a brat to my door. This is how sting ops make their targets look like bad guys. They use children in their sting. And they're sending children to my door that don't live here. And the apartment manager's sitting over there hiding behind a tree with a fucking camera. Now, why is she telling children to knock at my door, and why is she recording it? Because they're trying to fucking frame me as a bad guy. And the reason why is because the Portland police and the Multnomah County sheriffs were setting me up as a pedo, and my wife and her side of the family were aiding and abetting their fucking asses. And they publicly gave me blame behind my back for shit that my wife and her fuck buddies in law enforcement are guilty of. So they're trying to cover their asses. Sting ops are fucking active. They're organized. They lie for one another. They cover for one another's asses. I've got video to prove. I'm surrounded by these fucking Portland cops, and I got audio of on a previous vlog. I got audio of the apartment manager fucking lying for their asses. Now I hope you noticed that, gee, she magically knew. Oh, I'm trying to pay the rent. She had the fucking receipt in her hand and was walking towards me. Rent's not due until the 5th. Well, actually, it's due the 1st, but you know, I have until the 5th to pay the rent. But I didn't even knock at her door or nothing. I went over to the manager's office, and she's obviously not in the manager's office because nobody answered the door at the manager's office. And I hope you noticed, gee, she knows every time I fucking leave this apartment. She keeps track of and monitors when I leave my apartment. She knows. How does she know? Because she's a fucking sting off. They have my ass under video fucking surveillance. Anytime I get ready to leave this apartment, the sting ops that surround my apartment become very active. And they warn all the other sting ops. Like, they'll have at least one person. There's several people in this sting. And there's always at least one person monitoring, sitting at a fucking computer and monitoring what I'm doing. And they take turns doing it. So each one of them may spend maybe like 1 to 2 hours a day actually monitoring what I'm doing. So they always have at any given time one person watching what I'm doing inside my apartment. So if I'm getting ready to leave, then that one person that's watching warns the rest of the sting ops. In other words, they become very active. Now, before I started recording this vlog, I was starting to get ready. And the first thing I did was I took my keys out of my backpack and I set my keys down on a table over here next to my chair. And that's one of the first things that I did to get ready. And that's when they became active. And it was like 12:30 in the afternoon on a weekday, Tuesday, when most people are supposed to be fucking at work. Now, the apartment manager works here and lives here. So there's her excuse for being here in the afternoon. What's their fucking excuse? They're not disabled. They don't work here. But they do leave these apartments from time to time wearing police uniforms, and they're going to their privately owned vehicles that have death threat decals on them. I hope you noticed that, gee, the apartment manager, from the time I'm walking down the stairs and walking towards the manager's office, the apartment manager had the time to fill out this receipt and was heading straight for me with the receipt in her hand. Now, either her face is glued to her window and monitors everything I do visually by just peeking out her damn window all the time, or she has me under illegal video, or her and her sting buddies have me under illegal video surveillance, and one of the sting ops that happened to be monitoring me at that given moment warned the rest of the sting ops I'm getting ready to leave, which means they would have warned the apartment manager. Now, ironically, as I'm going down the stairs and I'm walking down the sidewalk, heading towards the manager's office, what's the manager doing in her apartment? Why, she's filling out a rent receipt. Gee, is she psychic? Is she? I didn't even have a chance to pay the rent yet, and she's filling out the fucking receipt. Now, is she behaving as a normal apartment manager? No, not at all. First off, I pay rent with personal checks. She shouldn't even be giving me receipts until the check clears. Apartment managers are normally not this stupid. Now, they're damn lucky I'm not the type of person that would take advantage of this and just go straight to the bank and take the money out of the bank account and say, ha-ha, fuck you, I've already paid rent. See, here's my proof that I paid the rent. They're damn lucky I'm not that type of person. They're damn lucky. But is that normal? Is it? Does she act like a normal apartment manager? No, she monitors every fucking thing I do. I told you they became active as I was getting ready to leave, and I hadn't even left the apartment yet. These walls are not soundproof. When people in these apartments become active and move around and they open and close covers and whatnot, I can hear that very clearly in my apartment. If they open their doors, or if they're opening and closing the cupboards, or whatever, if they're just walking around in their apartment, I can hear it because the floor creaks. If they walk around in their apartment, the floor creaks. If they're standing around out there on the catwalk, the floor fucking creaks. So I can tell immediately when they're active or inactive. For the most part, there's almost late. Ever since this cop took over, moved into this building, ever since this apartment, on my left, for the most part, has remained mostly empty. There's still furniture and shit like that in there, but it's this Portland cop that has control of that apartment that goes out of that apartment and he walks right in front of my apartment, goes in front of this apartment, and then goes inside. And he'll sit in there 10, 15, 20 minutes. Then he comes out of that apartment, walks in front of my apartment again, and then he goes back into this apartment. Now, the majority of the time, he's in that apartment. These cops that are surrounding my apartment mostly are in that apartment. Very seldom do they go into this apartment. They do almost every day, but they're only in there for like 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And the only reason I know is because if there's people in there walking around, well, then I can hear it. Because the floor fucking creaks. I can hear any movement. If I move around in my own apartment, I know damn well the sting off surrounding my apartment can easily hear me moving around. If I, like, wash dishes or something, or if I go to the bathroom, well, they can hear that. Because the floor creaks and shit like that when you walk on it. This apartment building is not a new apartment building, and the building does creak. The catwalk out there creaks. Everything creaks. When people open and close doors, you can hear that. You can hear when neighboring tenants flush toilets and stuff like that. So this place is not. If they run the sink next door, I can easily hear that, because their sink is like right on the other side of the wall where my sink is, and I can very easily hear them run their sink. Matter of fact, if they pour something down their drain, I can hear that as well very easily. So this place is not soundproof by any measure of the word. You can hear the people mowing the lawns out there. I don't know if I caught them on video or not, but they were mowing the lawns. I'm in the apartment now, and you can still very easily hear them out there mowing the lawn. Come on, folks. Is this normal? As I'm walking down the stairs and I'm walking over towards the manager's office, the apartment manager's in her apartment and not in the manager's office at all, and she's filling out a rent receipt. Is that normal? I just explained to you I'm under video surveillance by sting operatives and explained to you that the apartment manager is aiding and abetting them. These fucking cops put audio death threats in my home and bragged they have me under video surveillance and bragged that they had my apartment surrounded. They wanted me to know. And that was back in 2007. And they did that again in 2009. These sting ops that surround my apartments, they deliberately use they deliberately use vehicles to give death threat messages to and to flaunt it to their target that they're killers. This Portland cop that has control of these two surrounding apartments on either side of mine and apartment directly below mine, he has death threat decals on his pickup truck that he has in that parking lot. Well, that's what they were doing back in 2007 and in 2009, and when they were putting audio death threats in my home and flaunting the fact they have me surrounded, and flaunting the fact that I can't get help by calling 911. Now, is the apartment manager acting normal? Or is she acting like some kind of a magic psychic that can just predict the future and, oh, Terry's going to pay the rent right now. I better fill out the receipt before I go out the door. I'm not even going to wait for Terry to knock at my door to pay the rent. I'm just going to fill it out right now and walk out my door and hand it to Terry. Is this normal? No, it's fucking not normal. The bitch knows every fucking time I leave. She is a sting-off. She's aiding and abetting these fucking pedophile Portland poisonous police officers that are surrounding my goddamn apartment. She's not even following normal policies because they're more concerned about appearances for their video surveillance and whatnot. They're more concerned about that than they are about following normal, behaving normal. Like, is it normal to give me a receipt when I hand over a personal check that could easily bounce? Is that normal? She hasn't even cashed a check yet, and she's handing me a fucking receipt. That's not normal. Every place I've ever rented an apartment at, I've paid rent with personal checks, and they've never given me a receipt right off the bat. They always wait until the check clears. That's called duh. But this apartment manager, she's always performing for video surveillance. She's just like these Portland cops that are surrounding my apartment. They're always staging street theater performances for video surveillance. And the apartment manager moved from that building to this building for the purpose of aiding and abetting the cops that are surrounding my apartment in their street theater performances. And that's what she's doing. She's just basically, she's more concerned about putting on a good show for their video surveillance, because it doesn't really matter to her if I paid with a personal check. What matters to her is the performances that they get on their video surveillance. That's what matters. Because on their own video surveillance, does it establish whether I'm put it this way, if they're recording that incident where I'm paying the rent with the personal check and she's handing me the receipt, does their own video surveillance reflect the fact that I'm paying with a personal check? No, it does not. So as far as, she could easily say in court that, oh, well, he paid with a money order. That's why she handed the receipt. She's not interested in following normal behavior or acting normal or behaving normal at all. She's more interested in street theater performances for the Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriff's video surveillance. So she doesn't really give a damn if, if I handed her a personal check. She's just going to hand me a fucking receipt anyway. You have to understand this particular apartment is managed by the Multnomah County government. Multnomah County government regulates quite a few of the apartment buildings here in Portland, Oregon. This place is supposedly privately owned, but it's the Multnomah County government that's actually managing this place. And there's a shit ton of apartment buildings that is managed by the Multnomah County government. This happens to be one of them. Now, is this normal policy, a normal procedure for them to